I mean, it is a finite problem, I think, with a finite solution. As our late great friend Don Rumsfeld said in that famous speech about Iraq, you know, the one where he talked about known knowns, known unknowns, unknown unknowns. I couldn't follow it all, but I remember he talked about known knowns and known unknowns. But in any event, there are a lot of known knowns here. We know exactly how many structures are out there, more or less, what it's going to cost to take them down, and what will happen if we don't take them down. And most exciting to me is what we can do with these properties once they're demolished. There is an organization out there that talks about being a green city on a blue lake. Just imagine what these 10 to 15,000 properties would be like if we turned many of them into urban gardens. Imagine what it would be like if you lived on a street that didn't have 10 burned out houses, but rather had a series of gardens and natural plantings that gave the street a park-like feel. Terry Schwartz, a planner with Kent State's Cleveland Urban Design Collaborative and director of the Shrinking Cities Initiative, wrote recently in a report entitled The Cleveland Land Lab that, quote, the city's inventory of vacant lands is vast and growing. Vacant lands and buildings pose a devastating challenge, but also an unprecedented opportunity. The opportunity lies in the time we inhabit this moment of no longer and not yet, in which we can transform Cleveland into a more dynamic and ecologically sound and livable place, end of quotation there. Just as we know from studies done by a guy named Dan Immergluck that living next to a vacant property can drag down your property values, there are other studies that say if you live next to a cleaned landscape lot, that your value of your property is likely to go up by at least 30%. If you plant trees within 50 feet of your home, you can increase value by 9%. And there's a number of these studies that talk about the value of landscaping and taking this property and putting it to a good productive use. As I said, the vacant properties can be your friend, but the simple fact remains that Cleveland, East Cleveland, many of the communities in Northeast Ohio, the resources to deal with these properties is simply beyond their means. And that's what this land bank is about. It's really a regional effort. We talk about regionalism, but we have a hard time getting to it. This land bank is about regionalism. And I'm going to look up to Steve and ask him one more time. Wrap it up. Well, maybe you'll ask me some of these in the question and answer, Steve. I'm sorry, we have a few questions on it. It was the Indian Chief Seattle, the head of the Suquamish tribe, and I love this quote, who said, "We have not inherited this land from our ancestors. We have borrowed it from our children." I would say to our children that we have not done such a great job so far, but that we recognize the urgency, we're rolling up our sleeves, and we're getting to work. Thank you very much. Good time. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we have been listening to Cuyahoga County Treasurer Jim Rokakis. We will return to Jim in a moment for our traditional City Club questions. We encourage you to formulate your questions now. Please keep them brief and to the point. I'm sure we have many questions for Jim today. We welcome all of you here and those listening to WCPN 90.3 FM, WCLV, WTAM, or one of the many radio stations across the country that broadcast our forums. Radio broadcasts of the City Club are made possible through the generous support of Case Western Reserve University. Our television broadcast partners are WVIZ, PBS Idea Stream, and Time Warner Cable. Television broadcasts are supported by National City, now a part of PNC, and Cleveland State University. Closed captioning is supported by Nordson Corporation, and our live webcasts are supported by the University of Akron. Also today, we are pleased to welcome guests at tables hosted by Richard L. Bowen and Associates, friends of Tony Brancatelli, Baker Hostetler, and the friends of Jim Rokakis. Now we'd like to return to our speaker for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding the microphones today are Communications and Outreach Coordinator Deborah Agosti and PR and Programs Manager Carrie Miller. Now, first question, please. Before we get started, can I just ask people, tell you that we have something at your desk, living proof that there is going to be a land bank in the next 30 to 40 days is the fact that we're going to have a logo. I don't know which of these you'd like to select as your favorite, but if you wouldn't mind taking a pen and then giving it to somebody from my staff in the red as to which one you'd like, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Rokakis.
Yes.
I have a question that's somewhat afield from the one you've been talking about today, but it relates to the committee that's meeting right now to propose something to go on the ballot this fall, which would change our entire structure of our county government in many, many ways. My question is, how do you feel about the general tone of the proposals that are being drafted? And second, do you feel that the committee that's working on it is truly nonpartisan?
I somehow knew somebody was going to ask me this question. Let me just say this, that when the system of governance that we toil under was created in 1857, it was probably a good idea. I'm just not sure that in 2010 we need to elect the person that performs autopsies, the person that stamps your deed recorded, or for that matter, the person that sends out your property tax bill. And you know, yeah, that's all right, you can applaud. Your second part is going to be the one that I think determines whether or not this gets to a ballot. I think the effort needs to be bipartisan. I have been part of an informal effort that's gotten off the ground. Unfortunately, I think there have been some fits and starts. And yeah, I'd like to lead that too, but folks, I'm really busy, and I'm not trying to pass the buck on that one. I think there's some well-intentioned people. I think if we can get our act together, and I'll say I'm part of the we, that there will be an effort to have this on the ballot, but it's going to cost money, and it's going to take time, and we have a little bit of a deadline. We have to have petitions in by July. I know that any attempt to get this done through the Ohio legislature is going to go nowhere, because the legislature has basically said whatever has to be done for all 87 counties, because Summit County is on their own form of government. So I think it's time, and I think the events of the last year or so probably make it more critical than ever.
Jim, you've certainly done the city of Cleveland proud, and as our treasurer, first of all, I want to thank you for the valiant work that you and Gus and everyone have done on the county land bank. You know, in a crisis of this magnitude, it seems like the Casablanca phrases in order line up the usual suspects. And in this blame-placing atmosphere, one of the suspects has been the Community Reinvestment Act. And we hear people in Congress saying, well, if we hadn't been forced to give loans in the inner city and reverse the trends of redlining, that this crisis wouldn't have occurred. I know with the degree to which you've studied it so closely, what's your thoughts about the CRA and its role or non-role in this crisis?
There's nothing that I find more despicable than the folks who have tried to lay this crisis at the feet of the Community Reinvestment Act. Of the foreclosures that have occurred in this county since 2000, fewer than 13% have been Community Reinvestment Act loans. The majority of those loans have been made by the non-depository national banks, the Ameriquest, the Countrywides, the Argents, banks that were not governed by the CRA statute. And you know, you began to hear that argument a lot during the election for president in this past year, as a way of saying, look, if we didn't have to make loans to these poor people, this would never have happened. And that's just an outrage. I know where the blame lies. You want to lay it at the feet of those people who are poor and have been struggling to make payments, go right ahead. But I've said this about this crisis, that blame borrowers because they certainly share in the blame. But easy credit is like a drug. You know, and in this country, we put drug users in jail. But I'm more concerned with the pusher, and in that case, it's the mortgage broker, but the ultimate supplier of the drug, and in that case, it was Wall Street. So go ahead and blame the CRA if you want, but it's just not true. It's a lie. I didn't even plant that question.
Mr. Rokakis?